Right, guys, did you know that around 85% of you who listen to the show haven't yet hit the subscribe or like button?
It's not on that, is it?
Nah, it's rubbish.
So if you have found any value in watching or listening to the podcast, click like, follow, or subscribe.
It helps us so much.
And the bigger this show gets, the bigger Jacky's head gets.
All right, mate, chill out.
So thanks, guys. Enjoy the episode.
Yes, lads.
Do you know where the afters is? Things that you pull.
Yeah, you like put them on your shoulders and pull them back, but fucking uncomfortable, man.
I think that's the whole point, isn't it?
I know it is, yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Do you know why? Yeah, thanks. We're all rolling.
Yeah.
The posture will come from, like, a lot of my back pain comes from when I was DJing and also sat at studio desks where I'm sat like this. So you're sat bending forward, you're putting all that pressure on that bottom vertebrae.
Yeah.
When you're DJing, you bend over
Yeah.
for hours at a time.
Yeah.
And when you're leaning over to do like a stripe, you
Yeah.
over all the time. You've got like repetitive strain injury from constantly doing lines.
Yeah, I wonder who's got the worst posture in the music industry.
For doing rails. Or just in general.
Just in general.
All right, guys. Well, we'd say welcome to the afters, but to some more guests, but we haven't got a guest today, have we?
No, it's just me and you.
Going solo today.
Solo.
And we have decided to delve into a topic which has been brought up, God, so many times in messages, comments.
Yeah.
And so we thought we'd delve into the drug use in our careers, because every time we've done an episode so far, the clips we've put up relating to drug use and to mental health have been the ones that have got the biggest response.
Absolutely.
And the outpour has been incredible, and how just seeing other people's vulnerability in the inbox is incredible. I don't know. You deal with a lot of the social media
always,
stuff.
I mean, just even within Willer's Fitness, like, we're speaking with a lot of people all the time in terms of their drug use. But I just think in the industry, or just in general, it's something that's not talked about enough. And one thing actually, and I think this is going to be a really good conversation today, because I know this was more your background when we're talking about drug use, is the sort of silent epidemic at the moment with ketamine use. I'm getting so many messages now on a regular basis from young guys who have got serious ketamine problems, to the point where it's causing adverse effects on their internal health, and mental health as well. And on the outskirts of it, it's like, it's always cocaine. For me in my journey, that's all I'm ever talking about is cocaine. I think there's more people being open to talking about cocaine use and alcohol, but ketamine use seems to still be like, something fun that people are doing every now and again, when really there's quite a big problem, happening with that now.
I never saw it as a problem when I was in it. You don't, do you? You're never the problem. No. Everyone else has got the problem.
Never my problem, mate.
I always, I never had a problem doing ket. But when I don't know whether it's just this is a stereotype, but I always people who did coke, you could I don't know how to put this into words, but coke is something you can go to the pub, you can have a couple of pints and then get a bag in, right? Yeah. And that you could do that on a Thursday.
Yeah.
But like ket is much more of like an introvert. It's a depressant. It's a downer. And I know it's rife in the club scene now. Like all the young'uns are all doing ket. When I started doing ket, like back in 2011 or 12, no one talked about it. It was like it was a dead, dirty, cheap drug.
Yeah.
Everyone, you could get it for like a $5 or a $10 a gram, right? And it was almost frowned upon.
Yeah.
Now it's a cool thing to do. If you're 18, 19, you go into a rave.
Yeah.
When you walk into a rave and you go into the crowds, you can see it a mile off as well. Because in coke, everyone's like just chewing each other's ear off. No one will fucking shut up, talk nothing about nothing. But when you go into a crowd, you can just see everyone like moan. And it's like it's such an obvious look on people's faces. But I'd never really thought of it like a silent epidemic.
Yeah, well, do you know what? I mean, that's another reason why we wanted to do this episode today on the drug use, is because I didn't realize it was getting that bad until obviously we'd started talking about this in the podcast more and more, and so many more people had been reaching out to me. I think especially after, the first episode, well, obviously after the first episode, but when, Waf was talking about his journey.
Yeah, of course.
Like so many people messaging me about it and just talking about how they've got, these serious problems. And because it's not like a physical dependency neither, it's much more, mental in that respect. Like, people not sure how to deal with it, not sure how to, who to turn to, who to talk to. So I thought it'd be good if we could sort of dive into maybe some of the stories that you've had with that drug, and then also like how you got out of that. Do you know what I mean? Like what were some of the processes that you went through? Because I think with my cocaine use, I talk about that all the time in terms of how I stopped using cocaine, how I got to where I am now. And if you've not checked that out, you can look on Willer's Fitness Instagram to have a little Swifty there. But let's go. Like, when was the first time you used ketamine? Have we talked about? I don't think
I've never talked about this. No. So
I'll just drop you in it there.
No, that's all good. The first time I actually used ketamine was in Hartlepool or in Middlesbrough. It was one of the two. I used to DJ over there quite a bit, and some of the guys there did ket all the time, and I was always pills and MD and maybe a little bit of coke, but like all uppers, right? And just seeing people ketted out, it used to scare the fuck out of me, because I was like, why the fuck would I want to look like that? They're just like snot coming down, like afters and parts. People go in at the afters and they're doing like gram lines, and they're just doing huge stripes, and you can see the snot coming down. They're like monged out in the chair. I'm like, that doesn't look like a lot of fun, right? But anyway, I was at a party and the guy's like, look, if you just do a tiny bit after you've done like a bit of Mandy or whatever, it's fucking really fun. I was like, so this peer pressure kind of built up, and I tried a little bit, and mate, I remember sat in this guy's living room, just sat on the carpet, on this carpet he had in his living room, and just like feeling the carpet and just being like, oh my God, it's like that first bump was like being wrapped in like cotton wool, and it was just like, but it was at that point I did like, mate, it was like the tiniest little end of a key bit. It was the tolerance builds up with ket.
Of course.
But I did this tiny little bit, and that was the first time. I think I was about 21. Now, from that point, I'm going to fast forward because I could talk about this. This story goes on for years and years, obviously, from the age of 21. But going forward, I could then like, after a party, I could maybe have some stuff left. You go out, you might not do all your gear. You have a couple of pills. No,
What?
I walked into that one there.
You don't do all your gear?
I'm talking about, this is when I first started. So that's how it got. That's what it got to. But like through my 23, 24, when I was living in Newcastle, I could have some stuff in the house. And it wouldn't bother me. So I'd be at uni or when I was working or whatever, and I could have it in the house, and I wouldn't like be wanting to dip into it. But I'm fast forwarding quite a lot here, but as I got into my career, when I was, what I was talking about there was before I went professional.
Professional.
Once I'd gone full-time music, and it was kind of part and parcel of the job was partying, it became much harder for me to have the drugs in the house and not do them, which obviously you can probably relate to, right? But that came really slowly, as I was thinking back to like times where I've been in Newcastle when I was like 21, 22, and I used to play for this party on a Wednesday called Loop in Newcastle, and like, I remember having stuff in the house all week and being like not really interested at all. And then looking back, it's like 2 or 3 years before, like, when COVID happened, and going, how the fuck did I sit all week and not touch that gear? Because like towards the end, I couldn't do that. If I come back on a weekend and I had gear in my pocket, that was it. It would be Monday, Tuesday.
But I think that's the thing with drug use, actually. Like the more I talk about my own journey, the more I realise that it was quite a slow, strung out turn of events. Do you know what I mean? It was like using at the weekend, then it was, more often in
Well, you know what it's like? It's like that video you posted.
Oh, it's good, that, isn't it?
That video with a bird.
It's fucking deep, man.
A little bit, really deep. But that sums up exactly what we're talking about.
Of course,
It starts like just a tiny bit in the right environment, and then before you know it, you blink your eyes. It's 10 years later, and you're on a Tuesday afternoon, and you're like, fucking, just what am I doing? Just doing lines for nothing.
I remember, this just randomly popped up in my head here. It definitely wasn't scripted, because you can see my notes for today. Just drugs is the topic.
Fucking prep.
I'm a pro on this one. But I remember being in London, actually, coming back from Berlin. I think I had a gig here, and it was like I went round one of my friends. And this is when all my money was going on gear. Like, I was super broke. And he told me that he'd had some gear saved like from the week before, and he was saving it for the weekend. There was two things I thought there. First of all, how the fuck has he saved gear? And second of all, I was like, I wonder if he'll let me have that because I want to get on it tonight and I've got no money. And then that's what I ended up asking. He was like, I think at that moment, like that friendship sort of deteriorated because he was just thinking this guy's turned into a fucking baghead.
Yeah.
So,
Mate, that's how it becomes. And also, if you're doing that as a job, if you're in the DJ booth every weekend, or even if you go on the dance floor,
like promoters and stuff,
and punters, just punters. If your life is living Monday to Friday to go to the club on the Friday, Saturday, and that's your routine, which a lot of people, I still know a lot of people.
Same,
Nothing wrong with that if that's what you want to do, but you got to understand that exposing yourself to that, you're the product. I've said this before. You're the product of your environment, and if you're doing that all the time, it just becomes this cycle. and it just gets worse and worse. I was speaking to my wife just before this, actually, about like us just going to do this podcast, just you and me today. And she reminded me of a story when we were in Ibiza and I had my first gig. I think you remember we were speaking to Janssens, right? About the Viva stuff. Well, I had my first gig in Ibiza for Steve Lawler at Viva at Sankey's.
Oh, wow. What year was this?
2015, 2016, I think, something like that.
Okay.
And I had the gig on the night and I was so excited. We'd been there for 2 days. We'd been getting on it, right? For like 2 days. And we were like...
What, prior to it?
2 days, yeah. Of course. On the day of, it was such a nice day. We're like, right, let's go down... we're staying in Bossa. So obviously, Sankey's is in Bossa. Let's go down to the beach and we'll just get a fucking bottle of vodka. We'll sit on the beach. We'll just chill in the sun. And like 3 or 4 hours later, I remember coming around and I was by the way, before this, I was on the beach with my wife, girlfriend, fiance at the time, girlfriend at the time, my brother, and one of my friends at the time. And I remember coming to from the beach. I was sat in a bar with just my friend, and I was like, "What the fuck happened? How did we get here? Why have I got no top on?" And he was like, "It's all right, it's all right." And he kept saying, "It's all right, it's all right, it's all right." And I remember it's like, "No, what the fuck's going on?" Anyway, I managed to be able to kind of like come to a little bit, and then we started to walk back to the apartment. And my mate was like, "You have no idea what you've just done, did you?" I was like, "No, I have no idea." Anyway, obviously being in the sun all day, I'd been drained. Obviously, didn't drink any water.
Standard.
Me and my brother just smashing vodka, Coke in, or whatever it was. I can't remember what happened, but I just fucking smashed in maybe half a pill and did some ket and just completely like went.
Was this the night of the gig?
Night of the gig.
Buzzing.
This is 3
Professional.
This is 3 in the afternoon. This is my first professional gig in Ibiza, prepared. Anyway, I went back, and then my wife, who now a girlfriend at the time, was just like, "What the fuck is wrong with you? You've got a big gig tonight. You've come back. I couldn't walk. I was screaming on the beach. Apparently, I was shouting.
Nice.
I couldn't put my flip flops on. I couldn't stand. So my best mate had to sit with us and take us to this bar. And that's the sort of stuff that happens. This is at the very start of my career, I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out what makes someone go down that route and not like a lot of the people we've had on here who are doing really well in their career.
Yeah.
What's the difference between?
Just on that though, this is now we're like sober and out of that environment. When you think back to some of the stories, I'm thinking, why the fuck would I continue to take drugs and drink at that level when this is the sort of ridiculous stuff that I was doing? Embarrassing stuff, really. Do you know, like if you was down in Ibiza now and you see someone, see your younger self doing that, you'd be like, put your top on. But come on, mate.
Even that year, if I'd saw someone doing that, I would have been like, look at that poor cunt. Fucking hell, what a clip. That was me.
Yeah.
I don't know, that's really weird. I don't know, maybe because I've spoke about this before. I feel like I was hiding a lot of my insecurities.
Sorry, I do this every time.
Have you pulled it out again?
Every time, man.
Fucking useless.
Like every episode. Sorry.
Useless. He's useless. He's me being all vulnerable again.
Yeah, I'm so sorry, man.
Mate, I've got new headphones.
You fucking idiot. Oh, no, I did it on the last episode.
So basically, I feel like at the time I was probably very nervous for the gig. That was a big moment for me. Instead of channeling that energy into like jumping on Beatport and getting some good tracks, I just decided to dampen those. It was anxiety, man. It was always down to anxiety. When I look back, the more anxiety I had, the more ket I used to do. The more anxiety I had, the more I used to drink the tequila, and it was always trying to balance it out, but it's that balancing act's just not sustainable.
And not only that, I think very similar to mine and Liam's story in terms of like drug use and partying, because that's the sort of mindset we went into and started our careers in. Obviously, that stayed the same. It's just we started playing more and more, and that become more and more available. And obviously, that's where the problems start to set in, because this is the thing with drug use. It's all fun and games, but I don't care who you are. And I would love to have someone on this podcast who is doing drugs every single weekend and waking up on a Monday feeling 100% and happy and not depressed, because, that's eventually where it goes. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's got to be everyone, really, hasn't it?
Well, there probably will be some people who claim that.
Yeah, right? Of course.
But when they get into the 40s and a little bit later in life, that shit catches up with you. I don't care who the fuck you are, how many IV drips you do, what vitamins you take every week, how much water you drink on a daily basis. If you're fucking doing gear every weekend, that shit's going to catch up with you and you're going to be fucked.
Yeah, 100%.
Mate, I remember when you were talking about stories now, I've got another fucking story that has come back. I remember playing, this is when I was at uni, this is before I went professional, right? I was at uni in my last year, I was playing at Mint Club. I was doing Jacky and Friends, actually. I'm not going to say who the guest was, but because...
We do that quite a lot on here.
What?
I'm not going to say who it is, and then I forget to ask you at the end.
Oh, well, I will tell you about this one. You'll not forget this one. Right, so it was a good night. We were having fun in the booth, like fucking drinks just everywhere, right? So drinks are all over the booth. I have no idea whose drinks whose, right? Loads of lasses, loads of lads I don't know in the booth. Anyway,
standard,
right? Yeah. I was leathered. I was doing little bits of ket, but I was drinking mostly, right? I was just drinking because I think it was a Thursday night, so I didn't want to get too wasted because I think I had a gig on the Friday. So, next thing I know, I remember leaving Mint Club, just say like kind of walking to the door, and then I wake up in hospital.
Oh,
and there's a woman over me going, "What's your name? Can you say your name?" And I would remember knowing my name, but not being able to say my name. I was going, like, it was just noise, right? So they were like, "Look, you've taken something. What have you taken? Tell us what you've taken." I was like, "This is not what I've taken." I was trying to say, I couldn't say anything still, but I was like, I've been drinking and I've taken a bit of ket. Like but that's normal. That's super normal. Mm. So what had happened, I don't know where this had come from, but I'd fucking picked up a drink with Jeebs in.
Oh, shit.
GHB.
Yeah.
I'd been drinking. Now, doing Jeebs with alcohol is like super, super dangerous.
Yeah,
you can fucking die.
Yeah, I've heard.
Obviously, I didn't do it on purpose, but I'd picked this drink up with Jeebs in, just smashed it in because I thought it was my drink. A lot of probably other drinks with coke in, right?
Yeah.
And woke up in hospital. So as I'd come to, it took me about an hour and a half after like getting consciousness. Lost my bag, lost my keys. At the time, it was DJ bag, so it was like a UDG with CDs.
Yeah.
I lost my 150 quid headphones, my fucking wallet, everything, all gone. So I got home, didn't have any keys. I had my phone, but it was dead. So I had to get a taxi back, get my housemate to come out and give me some money for the taxi. Got in the house, and then was on Facebook, and I was like trying to contact people and say, "Sorry, I've lost all my shit."
Facebook.
Yeah. No, but apparently, then I found out what had happened. So 2 weeks later, I got a message on my artist page. "Hi, Jacky. I can't remember the name. Two lovely lads had got in touch and said, we found you outside Mint Club. You were passed out on the side, against the wall. You were like, couldn't really speak. We called an ambulance. The ambulance came, picked you up, put you in the ambulance. I tried to give them your bag, but because it wasn't on your person at the time,
they couldn't.
They couldn't take it, so we had to take it back. So we've held onto it. We forgot about it because we went to an after party.
Yeah.
And then they just managed to track us down and message us and said, "Where do you live?" So they come round the house, drop me stuff off. I give them 20 quid or 40 quid or whatever. I was like, "Thank you so much." Had all my shit in there. My headphones, my wallet, which had 20 quid in. Like, everything was in there as it was.
Decent.
Fucking whoever that was, if you're listening now, big up, because that's fucking...
It's good, that is.
Kudos. But yeah, that sort of shit does happen.
Yeah.
And also, that was an accident. I didn't do that on purpose. Like, I wasn't going out there to get that obliterated. You can pick a drink up in a club, and that can happen to anyone, you know?
We actually did that when I was a kid called minesweeping.
I did.
If you do that now and end up...
I remember
dangerous
when I started Newcastle College and you went to this like openers or freshers thing and you were giving out all these Like, you get loads of freebies in the first week of uni. And there was one store that was giving out those little plastic things to go on the top of your bottle. So, you can put it in the top of your bottle so people can't put stuff in it.
Yeah.
Like a little plastic thing, and you put it in the top, and so your straw goes in the middle, but you can't fit.
Yeah.
People can't put stuff in it. And they were giving these out, and I remember going to the woman and going, why the fuck do I want one of them? If someone wants to put something on my drink, fucking go for it. Like, just stupid, immature. But I thought that was fucking funny at the time. And now looking back going, what a fucking idiot. Because after that happened to me like 3 or 4 years later,
of course,
that can happen, man.
So from there, when do you think you realised you were like, shit, like ketamine is a problem for me now?
Oh, I remember going to a gig, I think it was like a year or two in. So like 2016, 17. I had management at the time. They knew as well. The manager that I had at the time, who I'm not going to mention their name, you know them.
Yeah.
They knew. They didn't intervene. They didn't have to. They were getting paid, right? And I was flying at the time. I was doing really well. I remember having gigs that weekend and thinking, I can't go to this gig unless I pick up. And then instantly, even though I knew at that point, instantly I was like, well, that's not normal. What do you mean I can't go to the club? I mean, I know for a fact if I'm going to go out raving as a clubber, which didn't happen that often because I was always working, but if you're going to go out as a raver, I mean, you've got to kind of, if you're into that, you've got to get your bits, right?
Yeah.
You get a couple of Garys, get a bit of whatever you want, right? You get sorted before. But if you're working, right, this is the thing, right? You're getting paid to be there by someone who's put their hard-earned money into it. And at the time, me as a middle-tier act, I was, the venues I was playing, they weren't flush, like a lot of them. They were hustling their money together to get this new up-and-coming artist on, to pay me, to hopefully, a lot of them just broke even, might have made a little bit of money. Some of them probably did pretty well, but running small events and smaller venues wasn't hard. So I always knew that. And even in the back of my mind, even though I always planned I was going to get wrecked afterwards, that I was always going to go back to the afters, always go back to the afters and have fun and go to the after party. I always did that. But for the gig, I always made sure that I didn't get too twisted. So in my head, I'm like, all right, well, if I'm being respectful to the promoter, then my behavior is irrelevant to anyone. What I was forgetting was I was damaging myself. I was damaging my body. My relationships were probably, suffering. I was being surrounded by the wrong people who were, condoning the behavior. But at that point, I knew, I think it was 2016, and I just knew. I knew that the fact that I can't feel comfortable going into a crowded room without a couple of bumps of ket and then a couple of shots of tequila, that's the problem. But it didn't stop me. How about you? When did you know?
Well, I was just thinking then, I mean, I think we've touched on this before, but do you think there is some responsibility on management and agents, like in this day, like in 2024, to have some duty of care for artists that they're taking on?
Well, my answer to that is simple, and it's absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if you compare that relationship between employee or whatever, contractor, whatever you want to call it, and manager, right? If in any other industry, if a manager saw an employee suffering from substance abuse or attachments to, alcohol or whatever, do you think they would maybe say something?
Yeah, of course.
It's only condoned because the industry is surrounded by it.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, and I'm not saying every manager is, but a lot of the time, the management and the agents and all of that, they're around it all as well. So it's normalized. I'm not even saying the managers and the agents get involved.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, if you go to Miami Music Conference and you're there for the whole week, right? Everyone's doing gear all week. And it's like Joe Rogan talks about like seeing people's face split open at like a fight, and his wife was going like, "Oh my God, look at the blood," and he's like, "Oh, it's all right." And it's because he's been around it so much.
It's normalized.
It's normalized. I think it's the same in the music industry.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. I've never looked at it like that, but is that an analogy? Is that what it is?
Analogy, yeah.
I think so. Yeah, it was a good one. But it's true.
We'll Google analogy.
Yeah. And then if it isn't that, we'll just cut it over with the correct word. But it's so true, though. Yeah. It is normalized. Do you know what I mean? But I think there should be, especially from the bigger, agencies and managers, especially if they're taking on young acts. There should be some duty of care for at least education or offering them an alternative feed. I think when we had Zach on, I like what he was saying about, bringing young artists through and sort of, just giving them the the knowledge in terms of looking after your health and well-being and not getting too tied up in that drug scene, because we're two obviously casualties, let's say, from that. And
I like to think of it differently, though. I think that we are casualties. We were past tense, but I feel like luckily we've managed to turn.
Absolutely, yeah. That's I mean that in the sense that we left because of the drug use. Realistically, let's face it. I'm pretty sure if I was in this headspace now that I am now, maybe I probably wouldn't have seen any reason to stop producing music and playing at gigs, because it was drugs that sort of forced that hand to make the decision to not carry on.
Didn't you ask me this last week? Did you not say, was it you or someone else said exactly that? They said, if you were in the space you're in now, do you think your music career would have been any different?
I feel absolutely. Of course it would have. I talked about this before. We got kicked off of so many agencies because of my drug use. PIV, we got kicked off of that because of my drug use. Do you know what I mean? And I mean, not just because I was using drugs all the time, but the actions that I was taking and the attitudes that I was having with people. Same at Watergate. Same thing happened there. Do you know what I mean? The actions that I was taking around people and the decisions that were made were heavily drug influenced, and obviously that forced them to make the decision to take us up. I'm trying to make this politely, kick us up there. But do you know what I mean? I mean, absolutely. And I think.
Well, let me take a back step on that. Even to like the bigger artists. And a perfect example of that is Avicii, right? So his management were just fucking pushing him to the brim.
Yeah.
He was a cash cow. Now, I'm not saying that I was anything near like a cash cow, but
I definitely wasn't.
I felt like a cow at a lot of points. Not a cash cow. But my management and stuff were making considerable money as I grew. Like one contract I got for one season in Ibiza was like 18 grand, and like that, like my first big contract. They take 20% of everything.
Yeah.
So for them to kind of come at you, I'm trying to put myself in their shoes, but as a manager, I probably wouldn't want to rock that relationship, if that makes sense. And also, I mean, obviously Avicii's a different kettle of fish, but he was pushed so far that his alcohol I think it was alcohol, which is venom, wasn't it?
I'm not sure. I think so. Yeah.
So his alcohol use got so bad that he had liver problems and all sorts, and he was dampening the anxiety and depression he had because of all the pushing from the top down. And I said this on the first or second podcast. I can't remember which one it was, which episode, but I said I feel it should be a top-down support.
Yeah.
There should be a system in place that if you see it, if you see it, I feel like managers should be looking out for the artists, because, like we've said there, if we didn't have these drug problems, like the energy I've got now that I'm putting into all these other businesses that I've started, that could have been channeled into Ableton, it could have been channeled into my content creation, it could have been channeled into creating new relationships. Instead, it was all, where's the where's the after party, and just cracking on, like just being a session victim.
Absolutely. Like, I think of my career, I mean, especially in Berlin, so Watergate was a big push for us. I was fucking using cocaine 3-4 times a week at that point. Do you know what I mean? So even getting that far, I was never at 100%. I was probably on 20% of my capabilities there. Do you know what I mean? Because I was probably making music once or twice a week, if that.
And the quality, even if you were making it, I couldn't the music I was making at the start, like that first Viva EP I signed. I remember when Steve Lawless sent me that tweet and said, well, let's get a Viva EP. I remember working on that for 4 months because I was working full time. I was so hungry to get out this fucking job. I never meant to work for anyone. I don't want to work for anyone else. I want to work for myself, right? So that the hunger to get out, just hand that fucking notice in at work was so strong. But once I'd got it, right, the hunger kind of died off. And then once the hunger's died off, like, the drugs just powered everything. It's hard to kind of even talking about it's now weird because the energy I had that I put in at the start, if I carried that through, and the drugs hadn't taken the drugs, and it wasn't just drugs. I was drinking fucking loads of tequila.
Yeah.
My rider was a bottle of Grey Goose, a bottle of Patron, loads of beers. I'd go home with bottles of Patron Silver every week. It was in the sometimes just like have it in a week. It was there.
I think that's another. You know, we were talking about Ket actually at the start of this, and we've as in natural fashion we've digressed a little bit from that. But alcohol, to be fair, is usually the catalyst, because I would never go, oh, I'm going to go and get an 8 for gearing today. I'd go, I'm going to have a couple of beers. Winky winky. What that meant is I'm going to, but you know what I mean, I'm going to get the gear in, but that would be the instigator to start that.
This is the difference between Ket and Coke, right?
You can use it.
You don't need, if I want to have a Coke, I have Coke because I've had a drink.
Yeah.
In the Ibiza, when I was doing the season, I was doing 8 a day. Easy. I'd have an 8 a day without even thinking about it, right? Obviously have days off here and there, but I'd have an 8 a day and I wouldn't even need to have a drink.
Yeah.
But if it was Coke, I couldn't just sit in the house and do Coke. You'd have to have some form of alcohol to kind of get that almost dampened anxiety feeling. If I had a line of Coke before having a drink, I'd be fucking worst thing ever. You just don't talk to me.
Yeah.
Fucking petrified. But no, alcohol is by far the I mean, it's the gateway. We say the gateway. It's such a fucking cliche thing to say, but it really is the instigator to all of this, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I don't think it's like, a lot of people have been asking me this now. I'm not pushing sobriety on anyone. I don't even really like using that word because I think it's about changing your mindset and lifestyle as opposed to I'm just never going to drink again. But, you know, if you are early in your career and you're drinking at every gig, and then every gig is then the after party, and then the after party is drugs, and then you're waking up 2 days later and feeling depressed. Like, you probably want to get out of that cycle early on and stop drinking early on in your career at every single gig, because otherwise potentially you could end up, you know, in a similar situation to yourself or myself, where you find yourself, you know, at the highest point of your career, but not able to progress any further because you've got a fucking drug and alcohol problem.
I feel that 100%, Sean. Like, I remember being at Mambo's for a pre-party for a pretty big brand. I'm not going to say the name again. Okay. Everyone can Google this. But I'd be at Mambo's, and the guys who run the party were like, every single time I went with one particular person came and went, it's early in the night. And it would be like 7 o'clock, and I'll already be getting on it. And I wasn't playing until maybe 3 in the morning, the next morning. And he'd be like, the night is still young. And every time I went down, he would say the same thing. And he was trying to look out for me. But
that's quite nice.
I didn't want to know, man.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's all right, Jack the lad sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, you can go down that road really quickly if you can nip it in the bud early. Again, I'm not trying to, this is me not preaching in any way. Like, I know our positions are a little bit different, but our situations in terms of your addiction and how you've just stopped everything because that one beer can kind of spiral out of control. I did that year, almost a year of sobriety last year, apart from a couple of nights, and it taught me a lot. But I still get impulses. I've told you about it. I get little impulses.
Yeah, like every episode when we're talking about gear. I'm like, my fucking nose is snivelling now. I'm like,
I think I've got a number in my phone still from a few years ago.
No, but of course, do you know, it's one thing that I always say to everyone who comes through Willis Fitness, for people that are looking to start their own journey and progress. I say it doesn't matter how far down the line you get. No. There's always going to be ups. There's always going to be downs. There's always about temptation. But I think it's just about getting hold of that early on and making sure that isn't a problem. And I think this is really why we wanted to come on the podcast and talk about this more often, because you know, no matter where you are in your career, I suppose, if you are finding that an issue, you're not alone at the end of the day, and there are certain steps that you can take and certain things that you can do. And I think the first stage of any change is recognizing the problem where you are, do you know what I mean? And then taking action. And that's the question that I'm going to put to you now, like, in terms of stopping your drug use and getting to where you are now in that mental and physical space, you know, which, you know, is incredible how far you've come on your journey. Like, what were the first steps that you took on the journey, on the process?
So it was a brutal few days at the start of last year, 2023. I don't know whether I've spoke about this, but December 2022 was a messy month. Like, we had a housewarming party, like we had a birthday party for my wife. I had like loads of Christmas drinks and meals that turned into parties and after parties. And then the start of that year, I didn't get out of bed till the 3rd of January. I was fucked, completely fucked. And I just said, I can't do this anymore.
2023?
Yeah, like last year.
Wow,
that was when I was working with you. I was in such a bad place. I was really down. I was depressed. I don't know if I was clinically depressed, but I felt depressed. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to work. I didn't want to go to the gym. I didn't want to go out the house. I felt fucking awful. So at that moment, I said, it was a rock bottom moment. I just said, fuck this. I'm not doing this anymore. And then I started reading books on how alcohol affects the brain and how alcohol affects the body and how alcohol is the gateway to all this other stuff and the chemical imbalances in your brain it creates and all that stuff. And it was a rock bottom moment for me. It was even worse than when I was on the road. And I'm not saying the drug use wasn't as bad, but it was more alcohol. In December, I was drinking every day, making Irish coffees at fucking 1 minute past 12, like smashing in cocktails, making margaritas on a Thursday night. Like, it just spirals really quickly.
Oh, I didn't know.
And that was the time I was working with you.
Yeah. See, I mean, I think this also what's testament to your own journey there is like, even within a year, how much progress you've made within your own self-discovery, let's say. But what about prior to that then? What about what about drug use? What was the transition for that? Was it that time then? Still, was that it, or was there a time before that where?
No, it was there.
Oh,
because
wow.
I was still getting bits. I was getting drinking, so I was getting the bags in, getting coke in, and then also just getting the kit in because we were doing CKs, and it was last January, January 23. That was the moment. And by the way, I'm not saying I'm not going to do anything going forward. Like, I'm not saying I'm completely sober.
Nice.
I've had a couple of drinks this year. I've got a couple of big parties. I got my friend's 40th next month, which is going to be probably quite a loud weekend, to put it lightly. And I've got a couple other things, but I feel like after doing that last year, it's made me realise that you really need to pick your moments. Yeah. You can't do it week in, week out. But if you want to every now and again get a little loose, and you can do it, some people obviously have the issue with the addiction, and that's
another kettle of fish, though.
Playing a different game.
But I think you're 100% right there, and that's what I say to everyone. Unless someone like myself, where I can go 9 times and have a great time, but there's always that 10th time. It's always coming, so it's not even worth it for me. If you can go out every now and again and enjoy it, then there's no reason not to. At the end of the day, I think labeling is the one thing to change. Do you know what I mean? Not talking about sobriety and going sober. Do you know what I mean? Just changing that lifestyle and that mindset. So you have got the self-control to pick your moments, but also acknowledge the fact that when you go out and get fucked up, you're going to be depressed after. Do you know what I mean? You ain't going to get shit done. You're not going to be 100% of yourself. And just being aware of that in advance, as opposed to going out every weekend, getting fucked up, and then labeling the fact that you're overweight, depressed. Do you know what I mean? You've got no money on anything else but the fact that you're going out week in, week out, because the chances are that's where the problem stems to. And I think, I'm saying that from experience, because for 8 years of me using cocaine pretty fucking heavily, you know what I mean? I mean, especially the end 4 years. I mean, the last 2 years in Berlin, it was a fucking daily basis, I used to blame everything else but cocaine. I actually remember me and Liam were talking about this quite recently, about like the fact of when I was using cocaine so much and I had all these problems. I had acid reflux, depression, I was falling out of everyone, I had no money, I was getting kicked out of every house that I was in. It was just never the drug's fault. It was anything else but mine or the drug's fault. And then when I actually started to take responsibility and think, well, actually, come on, it's, let's stop using cocaine as much and see what happens. And, lo and behold, my life started to improve. And then I started to take responsibility and think, well, actually, it is drugs and alcohol that's the problem here. And the reason why drugs and alcohol are the problem is because I am using them. I am allowing myself to use drugs and alcohol, which is causing the problem. So then it's me taking responsibility for that and then taking actions. And the action was to build fucking discipline enough so I could stop using on a regular basis. And then all the benefits of not using started to come into play. My advice for people who are not sure is like, not even advice, but I then started to try and dabble in it on a, every now and again basis. And unfortunately, that didn't work for me. Do you know what I mean? And now I've had to take the decision, which I'm completely happy with, in terms of, I ain't ever going to drink or do drugs again. Like, because it's just not worth it, because that is the root of where all my problems come to. So,
what you've done there is, and it's amazing just hearing that, because obviously I know that's what you've done, but hearing you say that whole story, it's a story.
Yeah.
Right? We all create stories. I said this before. We all create stories for ourselves in terms of everything about ourselves, whether it's to do with our attention, whether it's to do with our relationships. Some people have stories about themselves that, you'll hear the people go, lasses will go, oh, I always pick dickheads.
Yeah,
so they always end up being with a dickhead. Oh yeah, I've Coke doesn't bother me. Like I can handle it. You do. You can't handle it.
Yeah.
We create these stories around ourselves, and all you've done there is you've not all you've done, but what you've done is you've just changed your story.
Yeah.
Your story isn't that my name's Sean Willers. I'm part of the Willers brothers. I'm a fucking party head and I do coke.
Yeah.
You just change that to I'm disciplined.
Yeah.
I go to the gym in the morning. I get up at 5 o'clock. I stretch. That's your story now. Mm-hmm. All you got to do is change that story in your head. And I'm not saying all you need to do. It's not as easy as that. Obviously, there's a lot of action.
Absolutely.
That's required. But it is that simple. It's not easy, but it's 100% that simple.
Yeah, and it's just about, I hear it, obviously with the coaching and working with this fitness, I have a lot of consultations all the time. And the one thing that I'm hearing quite a lot of, first of all, is ketamine, which we talked about at the start, in terms of like, that is a silent epidemic at the moment. And the next one is labels. So many people are here putting labels on themselves. Do you know what I mean? I'm this, I'm that, so I can't do this, I can't do that, And that, again, that's what I used to do to when I was younger, I come from, a bad upbringing, so I can't be successful.
That's a story.
Yeah, of course.
A label or a story.
Yeah.
You're creating these stories about yourself, and we can change those stories as and when we want, but you've got to want to change it.
Yeah.
You've got to want it that bad. It's just the same as when I wanted that release with Viva. I was hungry as fuck. You need to, like, that rock bottom moment for me last January was the pivotal moment I needed for me to be hungry for something else. I didn't want to be that person anymore, getting up in the morning hungover, just down and fucking sick of my life. I really was. You need to want it. And I said this when people used to ask, when I used to go to gigs, hey, I'm starting a DJ, can you give me some advice? I'd go, how much do you fucking want it? That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with this. How much do you want to change? Don't label yourself. Or, you know what, do label yourself, but put a better label on it.
Yeah,
change your label. And you can do anything you want if you can do that.
Yeah. I think I think in terms of, like, the DJing part that you just said there as well, like, how much do you want it? I think that's also quite a good thing to ask yourself, like, how much do you want to be a DJ? Because if you really want to be a successful DJ and that's what it's about, then that's another reason why it's really important to get on top of drug and alcohol use early on.
100%,
because
100%.
if not, later on down the line, not everyone, okay? There's always a few, but there's a very good chance that will be a problem later on down the line, and you will have to either pick your DJ career or your fucking health. Do you know what I mean? And obviously for again, for us too, we got to that decision. So I think just to finish up, because I'm just conscious of time here, but just going back to what we were talking about at the start of the conversation in terms of ketamine use, which is obviously not obviously, but it is at the moment a silent epidemic, I believe. There's definitely a lot of problems around that. And you obviously having so much experience around that, what would be your advice to someone, not even in the music industry, but just some, young individual who seems trapped in a cycle of using ketamine on a regular basis?
I mean, advice or even words of wisdom, I don't want to say don't do it, because that's such hypocritical,
of course,
thing to say given my history. But one thing that I would say is focus on your health. If you focus on your health, right, regardless of what career you're in, if you focus on your health, then you will pick those moments and you won't fall into bad habits. There's no way you can do it. If you're doing what we're doing, I'm not showing off here, but we get up at 5, we text each other about the podcast or whatever, we've got shit going on, we get to the gym, we do stretch, meditate, whatever it is. If you're doing that regularly, doing ketamine or coke or whatever other drug it is on a regular basis is impossible. So all I would say, you know, the only thing that's really helped me during this, I don't know, if you want to call it recovery. I mean, I don't know. It's
a label, isn't it?
It's a label.
It's a label.
Yeah,
I don't like that. There's people said it all the time. Recovery, sobriety. It's like, it's just,
well, this journey.
There we go. There we go.
That's not cliche. Anything that's helped me on this journey, especially coming through the lockdowns and to where we are now with our businesses and stuff, is focus on your health.
Absolutely, yeah. I love that. Okay, great. What a positive way to end.
I'm glad we did this, Sean.
Yeah,
because,
so am I, mate.
We've spoke about all these messages in the inbox. So before we wrap up, I just want to say thank you so much to everyone who's messaged.
Yeah.
I thought there was a huge amount of struggle just within my friendship group or people who I know who've got attachments to these things. The amount of inbox, the amount our inbox has blown up from people who are wanting to just express their relatability to these stories it's honestly heartfelt. So thank you so much for all the support as well so far. And please, you know, if you want to drop us a message, we're dealing with the inbox as well. We're not, you know, getting this outsourced. We'll reply to you. We'll get back to you. And thanks for the support again.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you guys. Awesome. Nice one, bro.
Nice one. Cheers, man.
Does anybody know where the